We're continuing to follow President Trump's suggestion that the U.S. take over Gaza and the possibility of using U.S. boots on the ground to make it happen. Joining me now is Republican Congressman Mike Turner. He's a member of the Armed Services Committee. He's the former chair of the Intelligence Committee. First of all, are you concerned about the president's comments on Gaza? They certainly were not off the cuff. They were planned. He was reading. And he said he'd been working on it for months, but there is furious reaction from the Arab world, from our closest allies.
Andrea, thank you for having me. Your reporter, Kelly O'Donnell, and even Mike Allen both, characterized it as, perhaps it's provocative, it's certainly disruptive. I think it certainly characterizes that, it challenges the region to begin to have a discussion as, well, what's their plan, what's going to happen? As you know, as a result of the tragedy of October 7th, we're currently in a situation of a ceasefire. The Palestinians are living in desperate situation in Gaza. Certainly there's very little that the president can do unilaterally here, and I think there would be very little support in Congress for the United States to take over Gaza. But certainly the president, in his style and his way, and I don't intend to be a Trump translator, but in his style and his way, certainly has caused a focus of the world to turn to, okay, so what is going to be the solution for Gaza? And certainly everyone's focusing on his suggestion, and then what will be, what do we turn to next?
And there have been months and months of talks with the UAE, with MBS himself, certainly with, Sheikh Mohammed in Qatar, who has been such a key intermediary with Hamas throughout all of this, that they would participate in rebuilding Gaza if there were a pathway to a Palestinian state. So is that goal, which is a great goal of Netanyahu also, because Saudi normalization is at stake, is that in direct conflict with the pressure from certainly two ministers and key parts of the coalition to do exactly the opposite, to take more land from the West Bank and to potentially take land in Gaza?
Well, I think what's essential here is that the plan has to have the security of Israel. And what we've seen with the Hamas having been substantially diminished, with Hezbollah having been substantially diminished, with Iran now currently significantly reeling from the back and forth that they've had, where they expected to be coming out on top. You do see an opportunity in the region where we can, hopefully through negotiations, as the president has indicated that even he's willing to talk to Iran, to look at, well, what can be solutions in the area that can guarantee Israel's security. There have to be long-term solutions, and it has to be, the core of it has to be central to Israel's security.
Now, acknowledging that the president is a negotiator and he often opens with the maximum deal and then works backward, but this is what Jared Kushner had to say, his son-in-law, who was really the point person for a lot of Middle East and Persian Gulf diplomacy when he was in the White House. This is what he had to say at Harvard just last year in February.
I think that both sides are spending a fortune on military. I think neither side really wants to have, a terrorist organization enclaved right between them. And Gaza's waterfront property, it could be very valuable.
He was talking about a real estate deal.
Well, I think, though, what was more critical about what he said was that these are terrorist groups and organizations. I mean,
Sure.
I wouldn't focus on the words waterfront property. I'd focus on the words terrorist groups and organizations. Hamas, terrorist group and organization. Hezbollah, terrorist groups and organizations. Satellite franchise organizations, groups of Iran. I mean, this has, the only way that Israel can have long-term security and safety, and really the only way that the Palestinians can ever have true autonomy, sovereignty, and security themselves, is that they be free from the satellite terrorist groups and organizations of Iran. And that, hopefully, can be the way forward.
Well, Israel has really accomplished a transformation of the region. The air defenses, because of their retaliation against Iran, been vastly reduced. Syria, Assad is gone, Hezbollah is gone. The leaders of Hezbollah and Hamas have been targeted assassinations. There's a ceasefire in Lebanon. There's some good leaders now in comparison through the U.S. diplomacy. We're, standing up in Lebanon so far. But what would you think about U.S. boots on the ground in Gaza?
Well, I think there would be grave concerns, I think, in Congress, and certainly I would have grave concerns also. But the other aspect that there's one more step that on your list there that we need to throw in there, and that is Iran must not become a nuclear weapons state, and their ability to complete that has got to be significantly diminished. And
do you think that they are trying to find a shortcut to shorten the time where they could have something like a rough bomb?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what has been allowed in the last administration for them to continue to enrich and gain capabilities has got to be reversed.
Well, partly because some would say because of the withdrawal from the nuclear deal, but
and also some neglect.
Let me, just also ask you about the CIA. I think back to the tragedy in Beirut in 1983. We lost an entire generation of our Middle East CIA operatives in that horrible bombing at the embassy. And now we're talking about buyouts, the entire workforce. You know how long it takes to train an operative to be able to go overseas and then develop sources and contacts? And the analysts, just to get clearances, to recruit. Recruitment's been up.
Well, it would not be the entire workforce. Eligibility, remember, Andrea, is not like the entire workforce walking out the door.
But it was offered to the entire workforce.
Eligibility is not the entire workforce walking out the door. As we go through these budgetary changes, but also as we go through this issue of making certain that we have agencies, departments, bureaucracies that are responsive to policy leaderships of groups and organizations in the federal government, it's really important to be able to make these transitions. And I think
the CIA,
and I think Director Radcliffe is making the right decisions. He's a great leader. He understands certainly what the CIA needs to do. He's led.
What about his deputy, Mike Ellis?
I think Mike Ellis is going to be listening directly to the director, who's a great leader, and I think you're going to see excellent national security policy come out of the CIA.
And do you think that at this stage, with our national security and our counterterror issues, having withdrawn from Afghanistan and not having eyes on there, with ISIS potentially resurgent, with Hamas fighters reappearing in Gaza, is this the time to lose anybody from the CIA?
There are terrible dangers around the world. But at the same time, I do think that, and again, we're not talking about overall, reducing our intelligence capabilities or our investments in intelligence operations. There are opportunities for us to redirect, to reinvest, to invest in different ways. And I think giving the director that ability, that option is certainly important.
And what about Tulsi Gabbard as DNI? I know the Senate confirms, not the House, but few people know as much about intelligence as you do. CIA is operational, DNI is organizational, but the director of national intelligence has the final cut on the presidential daily brief in particular.
I was a little concerned about that nomination. It's been interesting to watch the Senate confirmation process and how senators have found their way in support of her nomination.
And those are Republican senators, but what about the fact that she still refuses to say that Edward Snowden is a terrorist? And let
me be clear.
She's a convert on FISA.
And Snowden is absolutely a traitor. And those of us who are in intelligence and know exactly what he did and what he took, and even those, I think, of the information that's in the public, it's very clear. He was a traitor to his country. There's a reason why he's in asylum in Russia. And it's unfortunate that she fails to make that statement because it's one that should be easy and obvious to state.
Couldn't we find better people than Tulsi Gabbard to take over?
I think there's always someone better than someone else, right? But I think we need people who are committed to our country, and apparently the senators, as they're going through the process, are convinced that she is.
Do you think the Speaker supports intelligence? There's no one more experienced than you, and you're not on the committee anymore.
That's very kind of you, Andrea. I appreciate it. I think the Speaker at his heart is very, very committed to national security.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Andrea, thank you for having me.
And